I'm Leo Desjardins from the Institute for Continued Learning, which is part of the University of California, San Diego Extension. And I will be your host for this series of presentations, 5 in part, based upon the concept of successful aging. ICL, besides being part of the University of California Extension, is also an OSHA Foundation Lifelong Learning Center. And we are very pleased to be co-sponsoring this presentation, this series of presentations, with the Sam and Rose Stein Institute for Research on Aging, which is also here at the University of California, San Diego, and is part of the medical school. Actually, this series is the product of a cooperative effort among several mechanisms and people in the university system here. And I'd like to take time to especially thank Eric von Neumann and the staff at UCSD TV for their support and cooperation, as well as Dean Mary Walshock for her encouragement and support in this series of presentations. We have compiled for you an impressive list of presenters who are authorities in one way or another in the field of aging. Some of them are published in the field, and by the way, there is a reading list that's available that goes with this series. That reading list can be accessed by either calling our office here on campus at 858-534-3409, or by accessing ICL's website at icl.ucsd.edu. Our first presenter is the executive director of the Stein Institute, which is also known as CIRA. J. Adam Milgram has degrees in clinical psychology from Temple University, and for over 25 years he has been a practicing psychotherapist, a professor of psychology, and a researcher of late in the field of aging studies. Adam will be speaking today on the subject, Living Longer, a Time of Increased Opportunity. And I think you will find that he has an interesting perspective on the subject matter. And let me say on the whole that I hope that you will find this series both educational and perhaps even at times entertaining. Let me introduce to you J. Adam Milgram from the CIRA or Stein Institute. Adam?
Good morning. It's a real pleasure and honor to be here presenting to this auspicious group, people who are involved in continuing to develop themselves and getting involved in life, stimulating their minds and hearts, and continuing to enjoy life and make the most of it. And I think that's wonderful. I applaud you, and I'm so honored to be here today. I'm going to be talking about living longer and what that means, a time of increased opportunity. But first, I'd like to talk a little bit about myself, if I may, to give you some idea of where I'm coming from, to give you some perspective on my thoughts and my feelings and how I look at life. I grew up in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and I was raised by loving parents who, while they provided all the necessities of life in terms of food, shelter, clothing, and all that, never gave me much direction. Now that was maybe a curse and a bliss at the same time, you might say. So I kind of fumbled around for quite a long time, not knowing who I was, where I was going, what this was all about. What I mean by this is life and my place in it. I gradually began to awaken from a kind of a stupor of childhood to start looking at myself and at life more. And interestingly, I became involved in a course when I was in the military, a psychology course. Teachers from Trenton State University were coming on the base, an Air Force base there called McGuire Air Force Base. Came on the base and provided classes for the servicemen. It was great. I figured, what the heck, you know? While in school, in high school, I graduated, I think, with a 73 average, and I was never counseled about college at all. I wonder why. They didn't think I was college material. Anyway, I took a course in psychology, and all of a sudden, I said to myself, wow, psychology, study of people, human beings, maybe I should get involved in this. Well, that took me on a long journey. I became a psychologist. Went to Temple University, got degree after degree, became a licensed psychologist, and for 25 years or so, taught psychology, worked in a prison situation and in a maximum security institution where I was chief psychologist, did a lot of psychotherapy, individual, family, group, you name it. Worked in drug and alcohol, was a specialist in the court. And while psychology brought a lot of understanding, in some ways, it left me still wondering, still not as happy as I thought I should be, not as content as I wanted to be, still having problems psychologically. And in my working with other people in particular, I was frustrated. It seemed like I had hit a wall. Interestingly enough, in my despair, and that's where we have to go sometimes, we have to get down before we get up. And that's in a lot of areas in life. And as you who have experienced life know this at times, we need to reach the bottom before we can find a way out. And all of a sudden, the world of spirituality came into my life. And I discovered, strangely enough, a wealth of literature from sages, prophets, wise men of all kinds, writing about this topic that I had never read anything about it before. I mean, it filled libraries, of course. The Jesus, Muhammad, and so on and so forth. And it opened up a new world. And suddenly, not suddenly perhaps, but incrementally, I began to integrate psychology and spirituality in my understanding of life, how to live, how to be a decent person, what does that mean, what's life all about. Some of the answers began to come. Some of the puzzle began to be ameliorated for me somewhat. Now, certainly not all of it. I'm still struggling, as we all are, and life is a struggle. We call it a challenge now because struggle is not the right, appropriate word to use. We shouldn't struggle in life, but it is a struggle. It's a struggle to gain understanding, and that continues. But I have integrated this, and what is interesting in my own particular life is that I am forced almost to share it. It's not sufficient for me to gather insight, to gather understanding, to write about it, but I got to share it in some way. So it's a privilege to be able to share some of my understanding today with you. That is my introduction. Now, the evolution of longevity has occurred and is still occurring. We are living longer. There's no doubt about it. If we look back in time, while there were people who had lived long lifespans, the majority of people lived lives of very short duration, let's put it that way. It was a cruel, hard, difficult life, and many, many people died in infancy, died, young, as we would see it to this day. We think of Romeo and Juliet, they got married, they were talking about love and marriage at 13, they were young. You had to get married very young. You didn't live very long. But slowly and incrementally, our life expectancy, not our lifespan, our life expectancy increased. While we knew that some people lived to ripe old ages, in the hundreds at times for some rare individuals, for the most part, our life expectancy up until 1900 was 47 years of age. Now, in this 21st century, we're living to 80, 77, 80. Women live longer than men, which is a very interesting dynamic. The older you get, the more women you see living, which says maybe something to us men. Something's wrong. Why do they live longer than us? So there is this increased longevity and increased time. And now that the baby boomers are coming to the fore and reaching their, quote, seniority, we have a vast population of people who are living longer and healthier too because of our increased sanitation. The foods we eat are better, safer. Childhood diseases, to the most part, have been conquered. We don't see a lot of children dying. Infant mortality is extremely low. That was the major cause of our dying years ago. So we have all this increased time. It's reaching a point now where there's a group called anti-aging medicine. It's a new field, anti-aging medicine. They're a group of doctors. They're legitimate. Some of them, I mean, most of them probably are legitimate specialists, doctors, physicians, you name it, in the field, who are treating aging as a disease. Interesting. An interesting thought. Aging as a disease to be what? Cured, to be conquered, which is rather strange, but it has some interesting dynamics about it. Most people that you speak of today in the scientific world realize and feel that eventually our lifespans will increase. Now, the oldest woman, Jean Clemay, on record, the oldest woman that we have records for, lived to be 123 years of age. Okay? That may be a large number in terms of looking at that from our perspective, but that in the future may be minimum. We may be able to increase the lifespan tremendously. So while we have now 30 or so odd years between 1947 to now 2005, we're living to 77, 80 years old, you're talking about 30 years plus, we may look in the future for much more time than that. And it's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. Science has done incredible things, and science will not stop discovering. And the thrust of anti-aging medicine will continue. Why? Because people want to live longer. And if people want to live longer, we're going to find a way of doing it. Not through the fountain of youth, perhaps, but through science, by developing genetic instruments and so on, and strategies that will increase their life. Now, one of the things that is interesting about today's living, what we've understood, genetics plays a vital role in aging. We all know that. But when we look at the reality of it, it is not the majority of our behavior dictated by our genes in terms of our aging and so on. While it is no doubt a factor, it does not necessarily play the major role. In fact, we're coming more and more to see scientifically that a lot of our aging is in our hands, that a lot of how long we live is up to us, which provides us with two things: a lot of responsibility, which may be difficult for some, but also a great deal of power on the other hand. So with responsibility comes all this power, that what we eat or not eat, what we drink or not drink, if we smoke or not, whether we exercise, our attitude, which is coming to the fore now. Attitude is becoming a very interesting factor. Optimism creates health and longevity. Would you believe it? Optimism. How that works through the biology is a kind of a complex factor, but it's true. We know this, the study after study after study. Our involvement with people, our social interaction, our relationships, all of this, the air we breathe, the environment we live in, all of these things play a vital role. And what is important, they're in our hands. Now, attitude is difficult to change. Personality is difficult to change, but we can change. We can learn how to live more optimistically. We certainly can control ourselves, although it takes discipline and a great deal of responsibility. We can control what we put in our bodies. We can say, I'm going to exercise. So a lot of our longevity is up to us. Not all of it. And I don't want to minimize that, because at times there's nothing you can do. Cancer comes, disability comes, heart attack comes. In fact, just the other day, we were talking, someone was bothered. He was 50 years old. He had a heart attack. He had low cholesterol. He exercised. He had good diet. He still had a heart attack. And he wondered why. So there are factors about disease that we don't know about. But a lot of it is in our hands. And that is a wonderful, wonderful thing. Now, I want to talk a little bit about change. I think change is probably one of the most important factors in our living. Change is constant. If there's anything constant in our being, it is change. And it's something that we all need to deal with. We're changing all the time. Pericles, the Greek, said you cannot cross the same river twice. I never understood that until relatively recently. What do you mean you can't cross the same river twice? Well, you can't because the river has changed and so have you. You're changing every day. Every day you're changing. And changing is like a dying. It's a dying to what was and a rebirthing to what can be. The problem, of course, is we don't know what we're going to rebirth into. And that's very, very meaningful in terms of aging because when we start aging, we start changing, right? In fact, if we look at aging, that's changing. That's what's happening. We look at our bodies. The first sign we know we're aging is we look in the mirror, what? We see gray hair, we see some brown spots, we see some sagging skin. Our aging relates very much to our conception of our bodies and what happens to them. These changes that occur when we're older are more difficult than the changes that happen to us when we're young, although all of them may produce anxiety. The reason they produce anxiety is because we don't know what we're going to change into. We don't know what's coming. The death of a spouse creates a tremendous amount of anxiety for some people. Why? Well, I have to deal with the bills now. I have to drive the car. Joe always drives the car. I have to make changes in my life. Those changes produce anxiety. We have to learn. In fact, learning and changing go hand in hand. If you accept the changes and learn how to deal with them, learn how to confront them, learn, you will grow and continue to develop, continue to live, and the anxiety will go away. Some of us are unprepared for change. The other changes about aging are, loss. There's a lot of loss in aging. I want to point that out. There's a lot of loss of our physical capacity in all levels, hearing, sight, smell, touch. It all starts deteriorating. We don't like that very much. Our friends, spouses die. There's death. There's a lot of loss. There's a loss of meaning. You get older, so, your kids are out of the house, your job is through, perhaps you've retired. You may have moved. What am I going to do now? How do I deal with that transition? There's a lot of loss, and how do we deal with loss? And how do we deal with change? And it's all related to dealing with change. Changes on all levels. Physical, mental, psychological, all. So, in fact, the realization is that the people who can deal with change tend to be healthier and longer lived. And, it's not something to look down upon if someone should go for counseling in terms of how to deal with the transition into older age, how to deal with all the changes that one occurs. It's really important to do so. Now, the first step in one's increased opportunity for living is to look at oneself, okay? To reassess and reevaluate where one is. Now, there's a thing called life review. People, tend to go to these classes and to understand what their life has been so far in order to go on. It's really important. Now, we do this all the time. We do this consciously or unconsciously. We're always evaluating ourselves. Now, with increased age, it's really important, especially when one has retired and one is moving on in life, to look back at life and to settle the things that need to be settled, to ask forgiveness, to clarify relationships, to make amends, to put the past behind us, so to speak, not in a negative way, not in terms of forgetting the good stuff, but in terms of looking at one's life and coming to the realization that it was good, that it was decent, that I did what I thought was best, that I'm now on a new road and I need to take assessment of where I wish to go now. So it's really important that one feels good about one's life in order to go on, that one settles the affairs of yesterday and puts them behind us so that one can be fresh and alive to face the challenges and opportunities that come along. So the first step is a kind of a conscious reflection of what I want to do. Where am I at this point in my life? What do I feel is important? What do I want to do with this increased time? It's really important that you make that conscious, that you just don't go on living day to day without reflecting and without looking at oneself. And consciously asking oneself, you know, I've done this all my life. What now can I do? Am I missing out on something that I haven't done in the past? Now that I am here, what is of value to me? What is important for me to do? It's very important because unless life has meaning, it's not worth living, you know? Meaningfulness is very important. Viktor Frankl has talked about that in his many books that he wrote. We need to find meaning in life. And that's one of the things that, you know, I didn't mention before in terms of changing. We have value in our work. We have value in raising our children. We have value in building a home, perhaps. What is our value now? What is my purpose now? And one needs to think about that very seriously in order to continue in a positive manner. Now, what is interesting about this increased life and this time in our lives is that it occurs in a period of what I call increased freedom. And what do I mean by that? Now, we may see it as our bodies may be deteriorating a little bit. We can't do some of the physical kinds of things that we've done. Maybe even mentally we can't do some of the things we used to do. So why do I say there's increased freedom? Well, we have all these, for example, ego needs, right? The needs for achievement, the needs to be loved, the needs to be recognized, the need to accomplish. All these ego needs perhaps are not necessary anymore. We don't have to be pulled and pushed by those needs of ours, even our sexual needs. For men in particular, they drive us to a great extent. But as one gets older, not that we need to necessarily let them go. We hope to have a continued erotic life as we age. But they're not so pressing. We've loved, we've lost, we've had our fill perhaps. We know where we're at with that. We've somehow disciplined ourselves sexually. We don't need to be top of the world. We've achieved in business. We don't have to be a great achiever, a great accomplisher. Not that any of these things can't be continued, but in some ways we're freed up to a great extent. We don't have to work, perhaps. What a wonderful thing, I think. Well, I'm working every day. It's a wonderful thing not to have to go in and punch a clock from 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock every day, 5 days a week, so on and so forth. What a relief. You don't have to kowtow to the boss. You don't have to be nice if you don't want to be. You don't have to play the game of society if you don't wish to. And there's a lot of games we play to get along in life. And I'm not saying it's not right to be polite and to be considerate and to be loving. But we can be more real. We can be freer in ourselves. We can wear purple, as one poet says, right? If we wish to. We may not have a spouse, and that's bad, but it may be good too, to contend with, to have to compromise with. We can want to go to the movies, we'll go to the movies, We don't have to say, Joe, you want to go to the movies and drag Joe along? We can go ourselves, perhaps. So we're very much freer in our ego needs, and even physically. We don't have to be, a sports buff or, we don't have to be out climbing mountains. We can have a lot freer, and we slow down, which is interesting. Maybe that slowing down is not bad. We think it's bad because we look at, we always compare with whoever, sports figures, young people, and look at them and, oh, just I wish I were young again and have that body and so on. But you know something? They got their problems. Maybe our bodies are sluggish a little bit and slowed down a little bit, not necessarily. But if so, maybe that's okay. We could smell the roses more. We could take the time to be involved in life more, to be more present in life more. So there's a lot more freedom. And I'd like to read a poem about that. And I'm going to punctuate some of the things I say with poetry because it expresses so much. It's called After 60 by Marilyn Zuckerman. The 6th decade is coming to an end. Doors have opened and shut. The great distractions are over. Passion, children, the long indenture of marriage. I fold them into a chest. I will not take them with me when I go. Everyone says the world is flat and finite on the other side of 60, that I will fall clear off the edge into darkness, that no one will hear from me again, nor want to. But I am ready for the knife slicing into the future, for the quiet that explodes inside, to join forces with the strong old woman, to throw everything away and begin again. Throw everything away and begin again. The great distractions are over. Passion, children, the long indenture of marriage. How interesting how she puts that. So there's this increased freedom, increased opportunity that you may not think of, and that I hope you do now. Now, this ever-changing world that we live in and this freedom that we have, provides us opportunity to create ourselves anew, really. I don't know why the universe is here, what humans are all about. I know I was told by my parent that you got to make something of yourself. We seek knowledge, we seek power, we seek happiness in life. I'm not sure why we're here on the planet, but I do know that we are here to do something meaningful with our lives, to create ourselves, and we do create ourselves. And that's what life's all about, isn't it? Just think of it. On the physical level, you grow up, you're born, very inadequate, can't walk, can't talk. We grow up eventually to be 20 or so and reach the level of our physical maturity. And through our activity with, in movement, we develop this ourselves physically. And there's an excellence in developing oneself physically. We reach, a point of great maturity physically. If you look at our sports figures and what they can do with their bodies, our dancers, our acrobats, the people who climb mountains. They make themselves beautiful, beautiful, incredibly functional, great bodies. And we do this on our own level. And so there is that aspect of creating oneself physically. Then we go through a long period of creating ourselves mentally. We go to school. Why do we go to school? To learn, to develop ourselves. We are, in effect, creating ourselves as we learn and as we develop. And this can go on forever. We can constantly develop our mental capacity. It does not necessarily ever end. Learning, or unlearning as the case may be, can continue forever. And it's important that we do that. In fact, physically, as well as health-wise, we now know that the brain needs to be stimulated. The lose it, use it, or lose it paradigm, that cliche, is important. And we now know it's true. The more you utilize your mind, your brain, the more you learn, especially new things. It's almost like, instead of brushing your teeth with your right hand, brush your teeth with your left hand. You create new synapses. Glial cells, nerve cells are constantly being regenerated in the mind. So we need to do that. Emotionally, we talk about maturation, the character development, that can go on forever. Some of us never reach a level of maturation that we would like. But to grow oneself into a decent human being takes a lifetime. Whatever that is, people define it differently, but we all can come to agreement that there's virtue in life and that most of us want to make ourselves a virtuous person. So we're doing this. So we're constant through our life. What we're doing is creating ourselves through these spheres: physical, mental, emotional spheres of life, and spiritual as well. And that continues. And so we have the opportunity to continue to do that, to continue to grow, to continue to develop, to continue to create ourselves. I mean, what do you want to be now? What do you want to do now in your life? Now that you've come here, there may have been things in your life that you've put aside. You may have wanted to become a biologist. You may have wanted to learn the piano. You may have wanted to be a singer. These things can be done now. We create and recreate ourselves constantly through life. So these added years provide us the opportunity to take a look at ourselves and say, what have we not done in our lives? What have we not accomplished? We can be authentically us. We can be more real, more a real person. And that freedom gives us that sense of who we really can, what really can be. They talk about following one's bliss, following with one's heart, following what one really wants to do. And here you have the opportunity with this increased time to do so. How wonderful. What an opportunity. Let me read you a poem about authenticity. A poem by Ruth Harriet Jacobs. Don't call me a young woman. Interesting poem. Don't call me a young woman. I was a young woman for years. But that was then, and this is now. I was a midlife woman for a long time, and I celebrated that good span. Now I am somebody magnificent, new, a seer, a wise woman, old, proud crone, an example and mentor to the young who need to learn old women wisdom. I look back on jobs well done and learn to do different tasks now. I think great thoughts and share them. Don't call me a young woman. You reveal your own fears of aging. Maybe you'd better come learn from all of us wonderful old women how to take a sum of your life with all its experience and knowledge and show how a fully developed life can know the joy of a past well done and the joy of life left to live. Don't call me a young woman. It's not a compliment or courtesy, but rather a grating discourtesy. Being old is a hard-won achievement. I repeat that. Being old is a hard-won achievement, not something to be brushed aside, treated as infirmity or ugliness, or apologized away by young woman. I'm an old woman, a long liver. I'm proud of it. I revel in it. I wear my gray hair and wrinkles as badges of triumphant survival, and I intend to grow even older. Old woman, proud of being an old woman, proud of her life, learning new tasks as she goes. What more? So we have this amazing opportunity to be who we really wish to be, to recreate, redefine rebirth oneself all the time. We have this opportunity. And so one must take a look at oneself and say, "Gee, you know, is there something I haven't done with my life? Is there something I really want to do? What really is important for me now?" I mean, the 30 years sounds like a lot of continued life, but no one knows what tomorrow will bring, right? I mean, I could walk outside and get hit by a brick, you know. Life is that fragile at times. Humans are that fragile. Death comes in a moment. So we don't know what tomorrow will bring. So what is it that I wish to do today that is viable, that will make meaning for me, that will bring life to me, that will bring joy to me and happiness? Because that's the search for every one of us, right? If we don't have happiness in our life, what is life? Something's lacking. If we're not happy and bubbly and looking for the new day, something's wrong. We need to feel that wrongness and do something about it, because there's something in you that needs expression. There's something in you that needs expression. There's something in each of us that is wonderful and beautiful and needs expression. And you need to find that. You need to discover that. You may not have discovered it yet, or you may have, but it's there to discover. Now, what more do these years give us? Well, obviously, they give us more time to experience life. I mean, when we look at life, what is our lives? Our lives are just experiences, one tacked on to another. Some remembered, some we don't wish to remember. But they're experiences, and each experience is vital. Why? Because it's these experiences that make our life meaningful. And it is what makes life meaningful. Our experience in life teaches us. In fact, life teaches us all the time. But what a joy it is to be involved in living, period. I know we forget. We get familiar. We take things for granted. I remember, I'll give you an example. My relatives, dear ones, were coming up to visit on a Thanksgiving to my house. And there was a lovely road that wound up through a little forest near my house that had all these incredibly beautiful trees there. And I said to my relatives, "Geez, why don't you take that windy road near my house? Because there's some beautiful scenery there, nature there." Well, they came to the house that day, and I said to them, "Well, you know, did you see the forest? What did you think?" Their response was, "Oh, they're just trees. I've seen trees before." I've seen trees before. Yes, but you didn't see those trees. There's not one tree that's alike. Everyone is different. So are people. Life is a miracle. Life is incredible. If you look around and realize the miracle that is life, nature, the beauty in nature is overwhelming. To be in nature, to walk amongst the trees, to walk underneath the sun, to see the stars, is a tremendous opportunity for what? For joy, for discovery, for one's happiness, to take nature in. But that's not it. That's just a small part of it. For people, involvement with people. Everyone is their own little world. To get to know people, to get to love them, to care for them. What an opportunity it is to just relish in your body, in the thought of being alive, to have the sight, smell, food. I know our society has problems with food, but eating, isn't that incredible? I mean, all the joy we have in a simple pleasure of eating. That's why we pray, I guess, and thankfulness. You know, not only does it sustain us, but it's incredible. Food is delicious. The taste, the smells, the textures of the food. The rain, we had complained about the rain. Remember, a teacher of mine, we complained about the rain, of course. I remember we were at a camp in the Alps, meditation camp, and it was raining very heavily. on top of this mountain. If you've ever been on top of a mountain in the rain, it's just difficult. But we're all huddled at the end of the meditation session, all huddled there waiting for the rain to cease. And my teacher comes out, opens the flap, bursts out of the room. Hey, look at the rain, how wonderful. It just walks out in bliss in the rain. We're there huddled, frightened of the rain. A different perception. How wonderful is the rain? Have you ever thought of rain and how meaningful it is, how much of a miracle? Clouds come, bring rain, and this constant circulation. Life, government, the arts, all of this. We have decades more to experience and enjoy. What an opportunity. Take the most of it. You here, I know, do that. You're here. You're taking the most out of life. But there are people who shuttered in their houses, who sit in front of the boob tube all day and don't appreciate and lose all sense of gratefulness. And gratitude, by the way, is a very, very important attribute for one. We should all learn gratitude. It's healthy, by the way. Makes you live longer, makes you appreciate life more. So we have all that. Another opportunity, another important opportunity is to develop oneself spiritually. And I know this is controversial. Some people have difficulty with this term and so on. I'm not talking about religion. I'm not even necessarily talking about God. I'm talking about the ground of being. I'm talking about the truth. I'm talking about, is there something beyond us? Is there something of human nature that is beyond our physical senses? Is there a God? Is there an afterlife? Is there a reason for all this? What is this all about? Where am I going? What is death? Will I be going someplace after that? One's spiritual development is as important, I feel, as any other aspect of one's development. And to be a fully functioning human being, I think one must go there. Whatever you call it, you don't have to call it God. You can call it the human spirit. It's not just the belief. God is just a name anyway that represents an ideal. Is there a reality called God? Is there something beyond me? Beyond all this? So one's spiritual development is greatly important. And one needs to do that. One needs to delve into that. And I don't think there is any more ennobling thing to do, especially when you're older, to take the time, because you have the time, to develop oneself spiritually, to seek, to read, to study, to meditate, to do practices, to search for truth, for love, because love is spiritual, by the way. That's why it's so difficult. Love in all its aspects is a spiritual sense. Truth above the facts of nature. So you're involved and you have the time now, the opportunity to fully engage yourself in that search if you wish to. It's not for everybody. In India, it's really interesting. In India, when a person has fulfilled her obligations, has raised a family, has finished work, has done his major responsibilities, goes off into the forest in search for his, quote, spiritual nature. Right? It's kind of, they call it his sadhana, the seeking. And we all are seekers. We all are looking for answers to why and where and what. This is what drives us. And these are the questions that motivate us. And it's great because they keep us alive. They keep us in the game. You want to be curious about life. And the spiritual world is fascinating, as I think we all are spiritual beings journeying in a human physical body. And I think life really is a spiritual journey as much as it is anything else. Lastly, in terms of opportunity, I'd like to speak about giving back to society. Why have we developed ourselves such? Why have we put in all this time and energy to make ourselves something? To have careers, to develop wisdom and knowledge that we have. If we can't give it back to society, we all stand on everybody else's shoulders. We have not come here by ourselves. I know in America we push this sense of individuality. And yes, we are individuals, but we are interdependent. We all must rely on each other. In fact, when one gets older, we have to go back to being very dependent again on others for many, many things. But none of us have come here to this day alone. First, it was our parents, our friends, our teachers, our wives and husbands, our colleagues at work, all our employees, all the tradespeople who have done this and that for us. We owe a lot. It's vital, I think, when one reaches one's elderhood, so to speak, when one has gathered in all the goodies that we have in terms of wealth, in terms of intelligence, in terms of experience, to be able to give that back to society, to mentor the young, to be an advocate for causes, to work for nonprofits, to provide them with your skill and understanding, to be counsel to our politicians, right? To give of your money to worthy causes. It's important and you can't take it with you. To give back. It's such an important thing and it's such a wonderful thing to do. For those who are givers on all levels, I'm sure most of you are, it's a blessing to give. In fact, it's by giving that we receive. Remember the St. Francis's prayer. It is loving that we are loved. It is giving that we are received. The more we give, the more we receive. So you can be selfish giver. Because if you give a lot, you're going to get a lot back. And that's the way the world works. So you want to give of yourself, of your time, your energy, your brains, your intellect, your money, back to society. You are the history. You are, you are the wise beings. There's a group of people under Reb Zalman Schachter, I don't know if you've heard of it, they call it the Spiritual Eldering Institute, where they're teaching, quote, older people to be elders, which is a positive term. Some people don't like elders, but it represents those people who have come to a certain level of maturity in terms of wisdom, in terms of understanding, where they are able to help others. And what a noble thing to do. And I urge you to do that. In ending, and I appreciate your patience with me, I'd like to read one more last poem called The Summer Day by Mary Oliver. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean, the one who has flung herself out of the grass, the one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down onto the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I have been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it that you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? Thank you.